MGM. I hope everyone is having a fantastic Halloween wherever you are. If you celebrate, I'm Chad Parisman. I'm going to kick things off here in today's CPG Accelerator session. We've got a great crew here talking about generative art, retail, entrepreneurship with the TRAME folks. Greg is going to jump here in just a second, but I just want to walk all of you through what the next couple of weeks will look like over here at the Accelerator. So this week, we are talking fundraising, we are talking innovation. Fundraising conversations are going on over in the Telegram. Thursday, we've got an office hours on Thursday afternoon. Come by and check that out if you can. Next week will be more pitch practice, all about fundraising, getting ready for that pitch week. And then in a couple of weeks, we do have the 3 sessions going on with Pitch Week. If you have not gotten your proposal in, if you've not talked to Caitlin about your session yet, please shoot her a note and let her know, that you're still working on it or kind of where you are. And then I'll jump back on with a POAP later today. If you've got questions, we are broadcasting to a couple of places, so drop them in the comments, drop them over in the Telegram. I'll be looking and monitoring for them. But otherwise, let's get the conversation going. Greg, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'll be here in the background and jump back towards the end of the conversation.
Thanks so much, Chad. Appreciate it. Welcome back, everyone. This is going to be an awesome conversation because I think it just touches so many very intriguing things that are going on in the world today. And so I'm very excited to be here with Isma and Jeff. Before we dive in, because I know you guys have amazing backgrounds, been doing some incredible things actually, but a lot of folks may not actually know who you are. I'd love for you maybe to just quickly both do like a quick introduction, tell us a little bit about yourselves and maybe the project that you're most actively, sort of working on today.
Jeff, would you like to start, please?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Jeff Davis. I'm a artist, and I also work at Art Blocks. I'm a strategic advisor at Art Blocks. So I've been an artist for, I guess, going on 30 years now, and my art practice has become increasingly digital over that time. I'm currently kind of working as a generative artist, code-based artist, and that was started getting into NFTs around 2019. And then Eric Snowfro approached me in 2020 about this platform he was working on called Art Blocks. And so I was one of the first artists to release a project there. And kind of after that, I was very interested in what he was working on. And so I became the first employee at Art Blocks and have been working there since.
I'm Isma Tazi. I'm born and raised in Morocco. I live in Paris, and I'm the CEO and founder of TRAME Paris. TRAME is a gallery, arts and design gallery that is at the intersection of technology and culture. So our most notable collection is the one we did with Marc Tuitui, Alexis André, which is a generative tapestry that we released earlier this year during NFT Paris.
Wow, sorry about that. Okay, now before we dive too deep into this, excuse me, I've got a really stupid question. What is generative art? Right? Are you an artist? Are you a developer? Are you both? Are you neither? I guess we hear that word generative now mixed into a lot of different things. And I'm kind of curious from both of your point of view, how do you even define generative art and sort of like the tentacles of it today?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think of generative art as a systems-based way of making art. And so, a traditional artist has an idea for a work of art. They go through the motions, they execute it, and then they've created this singular, item that's a work of art. A generative artist thinks instead of like a framework or system that can create art and usually create multiple outputs within that system. And in today's day and age, that generally means using computers to develop those systems or algorithms and writing computer code to execute the artistic outputs from that system. So that's how I think of it. It actually does not need to be technology based. So you could be a generative art and you could use roll dice to help you make decisions, and then you could paint them by hand and you would be a generative artist in that sense. But generally when people use that term, they're talking about artists who use computer code to create algorithmic systems that generate unique outputs.
Interesting. Ishmael, are you doing some computer based, I guess, but you also have a quite unique manifestation in the real world too. I
am an entrepreneur, so I'm not an artist. I'm an entrepreneur. I work with artists. I love generative art, and to me, I see the generative art potential truly culminating when you express it also in the physical world. So what I try to do in all of my projects is help artists use generative art and apply it to a physical manifestation since day one. And I think also the future is of art design and also of I think of our daily life, kind of like we will see a lot of unique pieces. And to me, generative art allows that. And that is something that I'm really passionate about, and that is something that I would like to see soon in the future. It's like what is generative art is so powerful that you can actually get unique outputs, but in the range of million, and that's truly powerful. And to some sense, like an artist once used this analogy. He said, like us humans, we all have unique traits, but we all are humans. So generative art, I feel it truly reflects our uniqueness as human beings. So that's how I feel about it from not as an artist, just as a person, and how a generative art enthusiast.
I can appreciate that as someone who, I was technically a designer for a part of my life, but not a good one. I like to say that being a developer squared off all my round edges. So I always find it so intriguing, this blend. I guess, Isma, actually, following up though, can you tell us a little bit more about TRAME and like the sort of the history of that project and that collaboration?
Sure. So TRAME started in January 2020 when we did our press launch, and it started as this research. So we preceded with the close family and friends in order to look for that opportunity at the intersection of technology and culture. My roots personally are in traditional contemporary art, design, craftsmanship, and we started with that in order to learning by doing and understanding the whole space to identify that opportunity. Now we did the 3 collections, and the third one was 3D printing of clay and hand glazing it, inspired by mathematics algorithms of Alhambra in Andalusia. So we worked with parametric designers, parametric architects in order to do this collection of decorative objects that were 3D printed in clay and hand glazed. And that really was the bridge to Web3, where we did the 4th collection with Alexis, which was generative tapestries. In other words, woven code. So Alexis put in place like a code that is meant to be woven. So the output is both digital and physical from day one, and is what we believe is the opportunity. That is what the future of art and design will look like. In other words, digital provenance combined with physical pieces. So yes, that's what TRAME is about.
Very cool. Jeff, you sort of started more from the art side, I guess. And, one of the beautiful things about art is that it can be expressed in so many mediums, like Ishmael is describing a variety of ways to do that. I'm kind of curious, are there any traits about generative art that you think lend themselves to sort of like that cross medium sort of like utilization? And are you looking or experimenting with any of those now?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. So, I mean, before I've been working generatively since probably 2009, 2010, in terms of my art practice. And so this was all pre NFTs as a sort of a medium or a way of, sharing the work that I was doing. And so for the bulk of my career, I've thought of myself as a digital printmaker, I guess. So I would create algorithms to generate sets of prints from. And so, yeah, and that's coming out of a more traditional printmaking background that I had, prior to kind of working with computers. So um, the thing that really intrigued me about NFTs when I kind of started exploring the space and kind of discovering what they were, was the idea that they could kind of retain their native digital format as a work of art, that I didn't have to take that extra step to like produce it into a physical item, although that's kind of how I'd been working. So that was very interesting to me, and I really dove into that, and that's kind of how I worked for a couple of years. But in probably the last year and a half, I've become increasingly interested in, oh, well, how do I kind of get back to some of the things I was doing pre NFTs, both in terms of like physical production, but also really interested in sort of the social experience around art. So missing the art openings that I used to have, and gatherings around putting art up on the walls and experiencing it with people, and having that experience. And so both of those avenues have been things that I've been kind of like trying to circle around back to. So yeah, I don't think it's there's no reason why generative art needs to stay in a digital format as its sort of end result. So I guess that's how I would leave that. And so, yeah, I'm personally interested, and I've been kind of experimenting a little bit more with prints. I'm a very 2D person in the way I approach art. So, I think of things very flat. And so, paper, prints on paper work really well for the way I think about my work. But yeah, and so I've also, and we'll get into it more, but I've been very excited to work with TRAME on a upcoming project, and a new expression, a new medium for me. So
very cool. I wore my generative hoodie today for you guys. This is actually one of our CPG members, Guan at Core 3D. He printed these specific. These are like physical. I don't know if I can get the back in here, but pretty cool. Made with X. This one's made with X copy. So it's really interesting, though. I think that you're absolutely seems to make sense that this crossover from like kind of there's two kinds of crossover, I think, and Isma, you're doing kind of like a very interesting, almost like novel kind of approach to it, because I think, Jeff, if you said like a lot of the traditional way that you might bring something into the physical world is like print it on a t-shirt or generate art prints of it or whatever it may be. Isma, you're doing like these way out there kind of transformations of art into not just like 3-dimensional things, but also just like mediums and formats. And we even did one here with CPG. We had a project called Navette. Could you describe a little bit more about what that collaboration was like, and sort of like the process of going about building that project?
Sure. First of all, I personally don't do anything. It's the artist.
Sure, yeah, but I'll use the proxy for the artist today.
Yeah. It's really the artists that express their creative visions from on both digital and physical worlds day one. So, and that is a very important distinction to make, is because, if you take a collection that is already out there and you print it on a t-shirt or something, that's merchandising. If you work with an artist in order for him to inform his algorithm with the physical constraints since day one, and then where we will actually prototype, develop a collection on both words since day one. That is for me, art and design of the future. It's not just merchandising. What you have, your t-shirt is merchandising. Navette, the tapestry that we did with Alexis André, is work of art. And elaborating a bit about this collection. So I met IRL with Chris Cantino in Art Basel last year in December. And I told him about this collection, this concept with Alexis André, who was back then based in Tokyo, Max Wictui. He's a French artist, an engineer based in Tokyo. And Chris is someone with great taste, and he immediately recognized the innovative approach, and he came on board. And then I met also with Art Blocks team, and because I needed the tech, and I'm using Art Blocks engine. Amazing engine team. And actually Jeff doesn't recall, but he was my entry point to Art Blocks. I just sent him a cold email, and then he forwarded to Dan from his team, and that's how we the three partners for this collection came together. So TRAME really working on the physical piece design, development, and so on. Art Blocks engine for the tech, and CPG for the UX design, and they made this beautiful website, collectibles.trameparis.com, among obviously enormous advice and inputs throughout the whole process. So we flew Alexis from Tokyo to Paris. I picked him up at 6 a.m. We drove to Aubusson, which is the gold standard of tapestry in the world. Dates back to 6 centuries ago. And then Alexis, phenomenal. Like, he flew from Tokyo to Paris, and then we drove, and right there and then, like, he was on this high-tech digital jacquard loom. He plugged his mind into it, and we started prototyping, understanding the various effects, features, etc. And for the first time, he wrote a script that is meant to be woven, and every tapestry is unique. Every digital artwork is unique, and we seamlessly weave it into a beautiful 3D object, as you say, that you can actually hang on your wall and display, and which will be a beautiful conversational pieces, including with your friends who are not familiar with the Web3 space.
It's interesting. It's amazing hearing you all talk about this, because there's a little bit of like launching a rocket and sort of like all of the crazy operational pieces, but also it feels like there's a bunch of jazz kind of going on as well, and kind of riffing and learning off of each other, and different strengths coming to fore, like to make something happen. Speaking, one of the things I think that it'd be interesting to hear a bit more about is like, what are the tools of the trade actually on this digital side? And Jeff, I know you were mentioning kind of with the Art Blocks engine. What is that? Like, how is that being developed and leveraged? And I guess, are there other tools that you're working or using as well in the process?
Yeah. So, I mean, to your point, kind of your framing point, like, for sure, I have felt this way for the last, I guess, 3 years of kind of working with Art Blocks. Like, we're building the plane as we're flying it. And I'm sure Isma feels the same way. And maybe just generally, that's just a sense that founders, feel like you're trying to do something new that nobody's really done before. And so you're kind of figuring it out and making up the rules and building tools for yourself kind of as you go. But yeah, so as I mentioned, I've been kind of involved with Art Blocks from the onset. So it's been, roughly 3 years, 3-year project. Art Blocks is a platform for generative artists where what happens is the artist puts their script on the blockchain, and then collectors can come and mint individual outputs in real time from that script. And so the purchase process is the minting. That's what we call it. And that creates a unique NFT sort of on the fly for the collector. And so It's a surprise to the artist what's coming out. It's a surprise to the collector what's coming out. And so Art Blocks is a platform that's how they operate. As we've grown, so we used Art Blocks to work directly with artists and host projects. And as we've grown, we've created a product called Art Blocks Engine. And so it's essentially our white label version of what we do on Art Blocks as a platform that we can offer to partners to provide the same experience of generative minting, creating unique outputs on the fly. And so that's a product now that we have 40 or 50 partners that we work with now that use that tech. And so that's really exciting for us because we are very much focused on generative art, and artists, individual artists who work in that medium. But we believe the technology, the generative minting technology, has a wide range of use cases that we probably can't imagine, or that we just don't, we're not going to explore every single type of, vertical that might want to do this. And so opening up the tech for other partners to come in, be creative with it, find new use cases, exciting applications for it, that gets us really excited. And so what TRAME's doing, what Isma's doing with TRAME is super exciting, high-end design objects using generative minting. It's fantastic. And we see this could be used for fashion. It could be used for gaming. It could be used, there's all sorts of, use cases we think for the technology. So it's been exciting to watch it sort of grow and blossom in different areas. I
love it. Yeah. Just quick programming note. If you do have a question and you're listening, feel free to drop it in the comments. Happy to try to address that as well and bring it up for you. There's an interesting sort of polarity I kind of think about sometimes, right? Like between sort of like art and commercialization, right? Like, design maybe for everyday things versus like art to be collected, right? And this feels like sometimes there's sometimes a tension, right? Like between, an artist and how they think about commercializing their work. And at the flip side, I think like another vector like here is kind of like, as we move into these more and more virtualized worlds, right? Or more of our lives are lived online, it sometimes feel like we maybe take the physical world for granted, right? I'm kind of curious, like, Isma, like, as you are exploring with artists, like, how does that dynamic sort of come up in conversations? Or, how are folks, do you see like any trend here of like plotting one way or another? Or is it sort of like all growing evenly?
I think, for TRAME, we are a high-end luxury art and design gallery. So our positioning is quite clear, is unique also within the space. And when artists work with us, we travel to the best craftsmen around the world, wherever they are. We go there with the artists and we make beautiful work of art that is high-end and luxury craftsmanship. So every conversation that comes like about the collection in all aspects, be it the design, the prototyping, the development, or also the commercial part, it's quite organic and easy for us because TRAME is about making culturally profound collections, and that's what we owe to the artists. And then they have to be commercially viable because that's what we owe to the company as well in order to work with more artists, etc. So, of course, there are conversations around this, but it's quite easy and straightforward because our positioning is clear. Everyone understands where we're going since day one when we work together. So, and we all have the same passion for what we're trying to bring to this space. So it's quite easy, I think, and organic and natural when we do it.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. I definitely feel that. Obviously, I think you're in a very well articulated sort of segment, so it works out tremendously well. I know you two are collaborating again, right? So, Jeff, there's a new project coming. I don't know if there's any parts of it you can share or want to share. We'd love to hear a little bit more about it.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's safe to say that I'm working with TRAME on an upcoming project. We Isma and I sort of hashed this out over the summer. We were both in Lisbon for the non-fungible conference. We were having dinner together and had a nice kind of deep dive and kind of ideas and brainstorming. And I decided that I wanted to work on a stained glass project. My art is very I explore color a lot in my art and the effects of color and light. And so the idea of using a medium like stained glass to explore color and the way, light can interact with itself. And so, so we just started down that process. So we kind of, I started conceptualizing some ideas. And as Isma mentioned, I took a trip to the studio that would be doing the production of the stained glass and spent a couple days there and kind of understanding how these things are built, what the color range is of the glass that's available, and then that really informed my thinking for the project. And so now we're getting ready to release the project, or kind of announce the project and reveal it in short order. And I'll let Isma get into any details he wants to get into, but I'm very excited about it. And it's
generative?
Yes. So
Okay.
just like all my other work, it's a generative algorithm that will produce outputs. And then those digital outputs will be translated by a stained glass studio in Chartres, France. And there'll be some additional production to turn them into sort of a final design object once the stained glass panels are created. And it's a really interesting mix for me because previously, I would work digitally, and then you would have a digital file that you just sort of send to a printer, and then, and there's no other work involved. There's no other individuals working on the project. And this is much different. So this is going to be digital files, and someone's going to be handcrafting sheets of panels of stained glass based on the digital files. And so there's a really interesting, it's not, the production is not coming directly, digital file creating the thing. There's a human being, taking the digital file and making the object by hand.
How and where does that happen then, right? Because someone commissions the physical piece, or I guess like what's the workflow to the extent you know it yet? Is it like I mint and then there's a handoff and then it's produced and so are you intervening in the middle there?
Yeah, so it'll be we haven't exactly decided, but yes, there'll be a generative mint, and then yes, that will be handed over to the studio for production. And then there'll be some lead time, before the physical would arrive at the collectors, and I would, most, part of the visit was to develop a relationship with the studio and the team there, so that we were kind of aligned on like what we were trying to accomplish. But yeah, I imagine that I will, as the mints are created and I see what they are and they're being kind of like handed over to the studio, I'm sure I'll, be fielding questions and providing oversight, for whatever, should it be this color glass or this color glass, and I'll help, help with decision making as much as needed. But I felt really confident about especially spending like 48 hours at the studio, and really spending time with the team. Like they understood like what I was doing, and when I was showing them prototypes and drafts and colors, and as we were kind of like we built an initial prototype, and they really were super it was kind of correctly made out of the gate. So it just kind of built a lot of confidence in terms of like that the work that would be coming out of the minter would be translated, as I would imagine it being being translated, if not beyond my imagination, I would say. So
I have a kind of please, Isma.
Yes, so basically in advance of Jeff's trip, we prepared a sample, a small prototype, and that was very helpful. So the workshop visit was not just conceptual about what we can do, what we cannot do, but there was also a very concrete application to what to Jeff's artwork, and from there it nurtured the conversation very well, and also the conversation between the craftsman and Jeff was very interesting. Ultimately, what we're trying to do here, like generative craft collection, is yet another conversation between technology and craftsmanship. Throughout history, technology has impacted a great deal our craft, and this is just another iteration of that conversation. And going back to your point about what the collector gets, so when you mint, when you buy the artwork, you buy both the digital and the physical artwork. It's a bundle at once. So this is the collection of generative stained glass pieces, and it's a limited edition.
It's actually, the question I had in my head was, I guess you as the artist, Jeff, but also I guess from a business, do you view these tightly coupled, or imagine them separating, right? I guess is that part of the way you envision it from the outset, or do you imagine them then living separate lives, right? Where someone may still own the digital version, but the physical one is owned elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I've had to think through, with print offerings that are related to NFTs that I've issued before. It's the same thing, and I've just kind of just made myself comfortable with the fact that these objects can have different lives from each other. I'm not trying to tie them together and force someone who has one or the other to kind of keep them bundled together. And so I guess when I think about, I guess I probably think about it in two ways. So if I'm doing an NFT project that's strictly meant to be a digital asset, then that's the single work of art, and there's really no question about it. When I'm producing a physical in conjunction with an NFT, I tend to think of the NFT as sort of like a plan for the creation of the physical, and I think they're equally valuable. I don't, it's not that it's lesser, or I think they're both important pieces, but that's kind of how I mentally position these things. And so that the NFT is a unique digital asset, but it's a plan for the creation of something physical. And then as the artist, I can control what that means on the physical production side. Is it a single output coming out of it? Can people, can I issue an unlimited number of physical productions of the plan? Can the plan move around, and can different owners have their own physical, manifestation of it? So that's how I tend to just sort of conceptualize it in my mind, that they're important things. They don't need to stay together. One's a plan for the physical, and then there's the physical thing that gets kind of created separately.
Yeah, it feels like that is also an interesting raw material to work with also, though, right? Is the social connectivity, or clues and hints maybe inside pieces being designed to be collaborated with others, right? Unlocking other capabilities. It's one of the powerful, amazing things about having some digital componentry to them, right? Now, this is CPG. We have a lot of builders and founders in the audience. A lot of them work with brands. I have two questions, kind of, I guess, as we kind of come to, near the end of our time. I'll start with the first one, which is, I guess, art in a lot of ways is very close to, if not one of the closest things to humanity, right? And artists find a way to see and translate sort of how people think and feel in new and interesting ways, right? Not oftentimes it's their reflection of those things, right? I guess I'm curious, as you've been helping developing artists and art in the world, are there any lessons you have for brands and builders out there to think about some of the concepts that underlie kind of the processes that you use that they could apply to their businesses themselves?
You go ahead.
Jeff,
You start. No, you start this one.
Frankly, I'm in the beginning of my journey, so I'm not sure I can give advice or recipes or so on. We are in a very, very new territory, as Jeff, we all know. I think the more experimentation, the better for everyone. I'm afraid.
See, now, Isma, I don't believe you, because from what you've heard already, you work with some of the oldest technologies, right? From tapestries to glass to all these things. I think you're selling yourself short there. I think you're pointing out an important thing already, right? Which is that everything is new, old is new again, right?
I mean, yes, we're leveraging this centuries-old craft in order to explore a new territory and continue this conversation. But if someone wants to do wants to work with artisans, I can give advice, because I've worked with many artisans around the world. Even in my family, we have artisans, my older generations, and so on. That's something I could really talk about. And but as a recipe or something, and this is very tailored. Like I cannot find something general that would apply to everything. I'm sorry to disappoint, but
no disappointment. I understand what you're saying.
Well,
Jeff,
yeah,
how about you?
Yeah, I'll shade in a little bit. So I have maybe like two things, I guess. So the generally first the art. Well, I have a few things. All right. So first of all, I want to say that being an artist is an entrepreneurial activity, and so artists create new things. They try to find markets for them, try to find collectors, and then if an artist is having success in that, then artists basically are running small businesses. There's a lot of business aspects to being an artist in terms of like, marketing and sales and, bookkeeping and paying taxes and, all that sort of stuff that just kind of falls on the artist's shoulders. So that's one. In kind of the arc of my career is I've been an artist, ever since, basically graduating from college. But that has, for the most part, has been a secondary activity to doing something professionally, something else professionally to sort of like support myself. And so for the bulk of my career, I was in higher education. I was a professor and program director, and I did that for 20 years while I was being an artist. And it wasn't until I kind of just got tired of that. And then I kind of stopped doing that. And it wasn't until I was in my 40s that I became an entrepreneur, like in the more strict sense of the word, not in terms of my art making. And I founded a company called Davis Editions. And so Davis Editions is a printmaking company. I was kind of leaning on my experience that I had developed creating digital prints of my own work. And I created essentially a platform for other contemporary artists to create limited edition prints of their work. And so I started working with other artists. And so that's a lesson. It's never too late to be an entrepreneur. And I also think that I could not have started that business without all the experience I had leading up to that point. And so, I'm a late stage entrepreneur, but I couldn't have had it any other way in terms of the way I needed all the experience that I had built up to be able to do the things I'm working on now. And that's what led me to become being able to be involved in Art Blocks, as I developed a skill set running Davis Editions, working with artists, managing artists, bringing projects to market. And as I launched my first project on Art Blocks and was speaking with Eric, I said, look, I'm in a position where I can take this skill set that I'm doing at Davis Editions and I can just apply it over here to Art Blocks. You need that. You need someone to help onboard artists and bring projects to market, and you can focus on the tech and the business side, of Art Blocks. And so that's how we kind of got going with Art Blocks. And then, so I think that's sort of exemplary of something where I think that's the other thing I would say. Entrepreneurship is not a linear path. You don't say, I have an idea and I'm going to go achieve it. And 2 years later, I go from point A and I end up at point B and my vision is complete. It's just a series of decisions and choices that you make. And it's more like a tree and you're just following certain branch paths. And so I think as an entrepreneur, you should be open to changes in direction, new input, new ideas, and be nimble, because I think that's, I think that's how you'll be successful. You should have a strong vision, you should pursue it, but be open to new directions along the way and new ideas. So those would be kind of my thing. So it's never too late to start, and be open to to where
you are an
you.
entrepreneur, right? I think like maybe you don't want to own all those parts yet, but I get that for sure, right? Actually, I want to go back to you about the artisans though, because I feel like we do live in a world that tends to focus on sort of the fast and the bountiful. You're helping unlock entrepreneurship, I guess, in a lot of artists, right? Some for the first time, and some, just like adding to their endeavors, right? Like much like Jeff is, layering on more and more, projects over time. I guess, can you talk about that importance of quality, right? Like, and sort of like, as brands, we sort of see this like invoking itself, like with the limited supplies and other things like that are these other ways to sort of improvise like quality, right? Like there's like a perception of like, there's only 50 of these, so that's why it's like a higher domain or trajectory. Yeah. But you're actually helping manifest that like for real. How important is that? And like, now as like our, when everyone's trying to go as fast as possible, but not necessarily do a great job, why is it so important now to really be focusing on doing a great job?
I think, quality should be at the core of what everyone's doing, focusing on the core thing that you bring, your added value to us. The quality of our work is that you can see it from the inception of the idea. Like whenever we pitch something to someone or a company or a department store or whatever partnership we do, like we try to put ourselves in the other person's shoes and see how they would think about it. Does it benefit them? And how we can have something that benefits everyone around the table. And that's already like qualitative thinking about a partnership, not just thinking about something that suits us and then pitching it. Most likely it won't work. And when it comes to our line of work, like when we work with artisans, first we try to find a craft that truly makes sense for the artist. Like with Jeff, when we were in Lisbon, stained glass was, it totally makes sense. I'm not trying to pitch clay or something. He might be interested, of course, but to me, like whenever I saw, because I'm a fan of Jeff's work, and when I saw it, I'm like, wow, that could be an amazing stained glass panel, colors, lights, etc. And so it made sense. And we do a trip and we inform the code and we inform the artist, and also the artisan needs to be convinced by what he's doing, how he pushes his practice, etc. And all this is part of the quality that you infuse in the end product, besides the quality itself of the craftsmanship. Do you see what I mean? Like
without a doubt.
Well, if I could,
and I think, by the way, that is a great lesson for all our founders out there, right? Is a good partnership understands everyone at the table and what value is, right? And so being able to understand that and map that into the real world, super, super powerful. We did have a couple of questions, actually, so I'll split them up, I guess.
1 second. I wanted to know what Jeff wanted to add.
Yeah, I was going to just add something.
Yeah, sorry.
So like, when we were starting to work on the project, Isma went and visited several stained glass studios kind of throughout France, traveled and visited and came back and said, this one's the best. This is who we should work with. And so I came out, made the visit. They had done, restored the stained glass in the Chartres Cathedral in town. So like that kind of work. But then just kind of as a footnote, after my studio visit in Chartres, I went back to Paris for a couple of days before I came home. I was in the Louvre, just spending an afternoon looking at art. And I'm in a particular area of the Louvre where there was they had replaced some of the windows of the Louvre with a stained glass contemporary art installation. and I go read the placard, and it was from Studio Loire, which is the studio I visited. So, Isma, hit the nail on the head. He basically, I think found the world's best stained glass studio to produce the project that we're working on. So, to the point of that is just, no cutting corners for sure. Just like finding the best of the best and just choosing to work with them. So
takes good partners and good relationships to make it happen, right? Sorry, I missed that, Jeff, by the way. So we did have a question from David. Maybe, Jeff, this might be better for you. But it says, he said, one barrier for artists in the generative art world has been not knowing how to code. In the future, no doubt AI will help do the lift with the code. Is this good or bad, right? And I guess, is the code itself art, right? Or is it strictly about the outputs?
I lean more into, what the end result is. I do find, value and beauty sort of in the process. So like, for instance, for Art Blocks, when when an artist creates a project for Art Blocks, the code is put on chain. It's like put on the blockchain. And so it's permanently sort of rendered there. And so I personally, I don't do super elaborate projects that take up a lot of data. So I'm able to keep mine like clean and readable. And so, I pride myself in putting scripts on the chain that are, nice, that someone can go look at and maybe make sense of.
Is it processing, or I guess like what's
we use a lot of different libraries, but I work in P5.js, which is a, JavaScript version of processing. But we have a lot, we use several different libraries, 3.js and things like that. But so to the point of AI, that doesn't bother me at all if AI allows people to create generative systems to bring their ideas to life. I think it's fine. I now use ChatGPT occasionally to just sort of like knock out, kind of basic underlying functions. Oh, I need a grid of 100 squares. Could you do that? And it just, creates the
nice,
nested for loops to do that. And then I can start extrapolating, from there. So I use it myself to help kind of do some mundane things that, I can figure out and sit down on my own. But, so I think that's fine. So I think it ultimately, as with anything, it's just how tools get used for creative means. And then people judging what's on the other side as being compelling, unique, interesting, capturing an artist's vision or voice, so
there was this interesting.
I was going to say, I feel the same way about just AI generated art, in and of itself, that it's very, very interesting. I find it more interesting when it feels like it's an expression of an individual artist. So if they're training their own models, for instance, to generate outputs versus using some of the really large models to, create outputs.
It's interesting. Like, I don't know if this, remembering this entirely right, but there was like a court case that said it wasn't copyrightable, I guess, because it wasn't made by a human. Right.
I think it was the opposite. So I think the court case was, the court case, the artists created, like a model to create AI art and wanted to give the copyright to the AI, to the model.
Interesting.
And that was the thing.
Oh, so the AI wasn't a human, so it couldn't own the copyright.
The AI was not able to have the copyright on the things that were coming out of it.
Okay. I know I'd heard that, some mixture of those words, like but that, yes. Let's do our last question and then we'll just say our goodbyes. But maybe Isma, maybe you can speak to this. Abasolo was asking, can generative art be scaled for mass production while still preserving its uniqueness and artistic value?
100%. I mean, that's what's all generative art is about, is producing in series unique outputs. And that's what I call generative manufacturing. I think we've seen recently Snowfro's collection of caps with hats with Red Bull. That shows how generative art, that's a use case for a mainstream, brand, and how generative art is leveraged. So to me, I think when it comes to retail, generative art truly addresses two things. One is the experiential part, and second is the uniqueness. So when you mint, you don't know what you're gonna get. That's the kind of a casino. So that's experiential. It's truly interesting, and also a lot of emotions are derived from that experience. And then you get a unique output that is yours. So that also solves retail issues in terms of customization and so on, and it's unique. So yes, I think generative art is truly a medium that is ripe, ready for and to be scaled for mass production.
Yeah, and I think it's a matter of just the manufacturing side of it that you mentioned, like kind of catching up with what's able to be accomplished digitally, and we're starting to see, initial things where why create something and every single one of them is the same way, a piece of furniture, or if we can find a way for a similar cost basis to make everyone unique and individual for the person, I think there's definitely things that are starting to be able to trend in that direction. One other thing I did want to just add on here too, because I talk about this on generative art and the idea of community. So generative creation does two things. So it creates a unique item for every single individual, but they are all related. They're all from the same system or the same algorithm or from the same series. And so in addition to providing individuality and uniqueness for each individual, it creates a community of shared interests, because now your fellow owners, collectors, neighbors, whatever it is from that collection, all have unique pieces, but they're all related to each other through the kind of overlying system or algorithm. There's a relationship to those things. And so it goes both ways. You get both individuality from the unique output, but then you get a shared community of all these other individuals who have their own outputs from the same collection. And so it's a really interesting mix. It was something that when I was first kind of getting into art blocks and seeing sort of like collections be minted and sort of the way the community that was developing around projects in terms of like, I have this really cool one, it's mine, let me see yours, what's yours look like? And then you have this sort of like lateral sort of community that develops around it too, which is really, really, really interesting and powerful. So,
by the way, one of my favorite side effects of Web3 is actually that ability to build those communities on the fly. Yeah. Gentlemen, I want to just say thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you for giving us some of your time today. I know your schedules are incredibly busy. I learned a lot. I hope everyone else got a chance to sort of like finally get their head inside of like what's going on in all this Gen AI, Gen Art stuff. And so you see, I'm so used to just saying Gen AI now. It's like, but it's been a pleasure, and we look forward to having you around and back in the future.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah. Thank you. It's been great.
Really appreciate you guys joining today. For the folks watching live, for sticking around, for anyone watching it in the next 2 days, we've got our PO-app, Secret Phases Navette, Navette, all lowercase. So go hit up the PO-app app, get your PO-app. It'll be good for getting yourself CPG certified at the end of the season. And then also connecting it over to the rewards program we have over at CPG. Again, for Caitlin and Raf and Chris and everyone else here at Club CPG, really appreciate Jeff and Isma, your time today. Greg, for you stepping in and hosting a fantastic conversation. And we'll see everyone over in Telegram. Appreciate your time. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.